Hello friends, welcome back to my channel and to another video. I hope you're doing really well. Really? Did y'all hear that? That was a sigh of protest from my youngest and smallest child. Anyways, welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a bit different from things I've done in the past. I haven't really had time or energy to film any other kind of videos at the barn because it's been so cold and it's only going to get colder. Today, I thought that I would do a type of video that I've seen. I mean, they've been popular on YouTube for years and I've always wanted to do one, but I just never had an idea that I thought would make a good video. But a few weeks ago, I was brainstorming some YouTube discussion type video ideas, and I thought that it would be really funny and hopefully a little bit self-deprecating and educational to tier rank horse equipment that I've used in the past that I would never use again. This is equipment that I was either told to use or wanted to use because it was fashionable or used as a band-aid for gaps in training. I'm not saying that if you use these you're abusive. I'm just saying that personally I would never use them again because biomechanically they don't do what it says on the package, or studies have shown that they might do more harm than good, things like that. So there are 14 pieces of equipment that I've used in the past that I don't think I'll ever use again. Like, I'm never gonna say never. They're definitely not pieces of equipment that I'm likely to use with Merlin. So let's just jump right into it. First, I wanna go through the 5 tier ranks that I've put. So the top is like least bad, it's meh, it's okay. Orange one is like, what's the point? So it's like, these pieces of equipment aren't necessarily bad, but they don't really serve any specific purpose and you're using them just for aesthetics. The next is no thanks, which is like, nah. It gives me the ick is what it says on the tin, and you use that on a horse is like ones that I think are cruel and that there would be better ways of going about accomplishing the goal that the equipment is said to achieve. So first up is something that I have used somewhat recently, and I used it on Merlin, and that's a lead shank. A lead shank is basically, if you don't know what it is, a lead rope with a chain on the end that you might put over the horse's nose or under their chin to have a little bit more control if the horse is feeling energetic or spooky or whatever. I will add the caveat that this is a piece of equipment that I would probably use in a case where using it would guarantee mine or the horse's safety. So if there were like an emergency unloading on the side of the road and I needed something that would guarantee that the horse wouldn't take off or spook or something like that. But it's not something that I would probably ever use on Merlin again. I have used it on him in the past. If you look back at the video where I talked about why I switched to positive reinforcement, you can see me using it in one of the clips in that video as like a before clip, but it can serve a purpose for safety. So I'm gonna put it in meh, it's okay. Next up is Spurs. Now, I need to add a big caveat to this. This is another one that when people talk about it, some people will go all the way to the side of, oh my god, anyone who uses spurs is abusive, and other people will refuse to admit that spurs can be damaging to the horse. I'm somewhere in the middle, leaning a little bit more to the side of spurs are heavily misused. You know, they are required for upper level dressage, and I do think that in cases where they're being used by a rider who knows how to keep the spur off the horse unless it's needed for soft, precise aid, that they're okay. The cases in the past where I've used spurs have not been for that purpose. It's been because the horse was dead to my leg, and rather than training forwardness in another way, I just slapped some spurs on, sometimes some pretty long spurs. So I personally think that spurs are heavily misused to the point where they are slapped on as a band-aid to fix a hole in training. Spurs, once again, I'm gonna put in meh, it's okay, because personally I probably won't use them on Merlin because I'm trying my best to train him to be forward off of very gentle aids. Next up is something that, like, it doesn't hurt the horse in the sense of, like, it's not like a piece of equipment that can be misused to the point of being like abusive or whatever, but it's any kind of, well, I have one picture of neoprene boots here, but it's like neoprene, leather, any kind of like non-breathable boot. Because there's been a lot of studies done in recent years that have shown that the way that non-breathable boots trap heat on the horse's leg can be damaging long term to a horse's soundness and comfort. I'm gonna put that in no thanks. But thankfully a lot of brands now are coming out with boots that have some kind of ventilation. So I have a set of boots from Lemieux that are kind of like a hybrid dressage jumping boot that has vents in the back. And there's more and more brushing boots and tendon boots that are coming out that have really, really good ventilation for when you absolutely need them, like when you're jumping or going cross country. And it seems that I have 2 images of Spurs, so I'm also gonna put that one in meh, it's okay. On a similar line as the boots, fleece polo wraps. There's the kind of the same criticisms against fleece polo wraps as any kind of non-breathable boot, but also the point where polo wraps don't really do much. Studies have shown that they don't really have any real protective effect on the horse's legs. So this is going to go in what's the point, because they don't really serve any kind of protective function. It's more just for the aesthetic, and they can overheat your horse's legs. Now I will say I have seen some brands that are not quite polo wraps, but they're similar kind of exercise wraps that do have some breathability. I forget the name. Those might be the only kind that I would ever use, say for like a dressage clinic or something like that. Next, we're gonna move into bits. These are just bits that I have used. So there's 2 harsher bits in particular that I've used. One is a Happy Mouth Pelham. We used this on Chic, who was my kind of childhood hard horse. And any kind of bit with excess leverage, like they can be quite harsh. Now, I will say a Happy Mouth Pelham is one of the softer options for leverage bits, but I still would never use it again. So I'm gonna put this in It Gives Me the Ick. And then the other type of bit that we used to use on Chic was a D-ring corkscrew. So it's not the D-ring that I have issue with, it's the corkscrew mouthpiece. This is actually quite an abrasive bit on the horse's gums. If you think about the texture of the corkscrew rubbing on the gums, super unpleasant. So that's also going to go in It Gives Me the Ick. Next up are a few various aids that are meant to help your horse get into a proper head carriage as a shortcut without doing the proper training. First up is one of the lunging systems, so the Pessoa lunging system and various knockoffs, because every brand and their mother sells a knockoff of this. The Pessoa is particularly bad because the way that the straps go from the bit around the butt and back means that the horse is almost working against itself. It doesn't encourage true engagement through the back. And the same can be said for all of these head carriage aids. So the Pessoa system, I think I'm gonna put in no thanks. Another lunging, well, it's not really a system, but another lunging aid is, I don't really know what they're called. I always called it a German lunging rope. It's basically a big elastic bungee that goes over the withers, or over like the very front part of the back, through the legs, like in between the 2 front legs, and then attaches to the bit. And it's meant to encourage the horse, again, to connect and to work through their back and whatever. But the thing is all it's really doing is encouraging the head down, which is not true engagement. True engagement and connection comes from impulsion from the hind end forward. This again is going to go in no thanks. And then we've got 2 that I've used that are used in riding. So the first is a Chambon, basically a lunging aid that attaches, I think, to the girth in between the legs, and then it goes like up over the head and attaches to the bit. It works independently of the reins, but what it does is basically if the horse gets their head to a certain height, it discourages them from going any higher than that. Some people will say that this device serves a safety purpose for horses that are throwing their heads and tossing their heads really high and being dangerous. And my counter to that would just be that if a horse is obviously that dangerous under saddle, there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed before anyone even gets on. To me, this, it doesn't give me the ick. I just don't see the point, basically. So I'm gonna put it in what's the point. Last of the head carriage aids is draw reins. Now, if you go on TikTok, draw reins are a very controversial item. And a lot of equestrian creators on TikTok will make videos about draw reins because it knows that it will get them engagement. In this picture that I chose, it's literally like an advertising picture for a set of draw reins. I don't even know what brand. And the horse has such clear pain face. So the thing with draw reins and the way that it differs for me from something like Chambon is that Chambon at least is elastic and it has a bit of give. Draw reins are often, at least the set that I had, are often made of leather or rope, and they have no give. So as tight as you choose to use them, from there the horse can't really relieve any pressure or tension that they may feel unless they put their head even lower. And if the reason why you're using draw reins is to try to teach your horse to connect or to go into a frame, as I used to say it when I used them on Annabelle as a teenager, because I didn't know how to connect her, it can have a really detrimental effect on your horse. Because if you think about it, because they have no give, the horse can't duck out from that position to get a little bit of relief from that pressure. It's a similar thing as to some kinds of nose bands. If a nose band is done too tight, the horse can't open their mouth to get a bit of relief or to release tension that they may feel from pressure on the bit. All you're doing is forcing your horse's head into a position that's then going to hurt their muscles and cause them pain. And with draw reins, the horse's head is pulled down, but if they're not working properly through the back, literally all you're doing is pulling their head down. It's not really encouraging true engagement. Draw reins, personally, and I say this as someone who used them a lot, I'm gonna put it gives me the ick, because I now understand a lot more about equine biomechanics and how the body is supposed to work in connection. And if you're having issues getting your horse to connect properly, you'd be much better served finding a really good classically trained dressage coach and getting them to work with you and your horse than you would by using something like draw reins. 3 left. The next one is on a similar vein as the lead shank, and this is something that we had for Chic because he was quite spunky, and that is a lunge line with a lead shank. And to me, I'm going to put this straight into what's the point, because to me, if you're using a lunge line with a lead shank and clipping it like you would a normal lunge line, why don't you just use a normal lunge line? I don't know. To me, the amount of pressure that I would exert on the lunge line when I was lunging Chic, because he was quite spooky and could be quite like energetic in the winter, the amount of pressure that I would exert on the rope to get him to slow down, I just don't feel comfortable with. So that is going in what's the point. Next up, it's not like a specific thing, but it also kind of is. So it's horseshoes, shoeing as like a concept. I grew up thinking that horses needed shoes. If they were going to be doing any kind of like sport horse work, they needed shoes. For the entire time that we had Chic, he had front shoes on because he had sensitive soles. Most of the horses that I rode until 4 or 5 years ago were shod. When I started riding at my current barn, most of the horses are unshod. Like most of them are barefoot, from sensitive soled off the track thoroughbreds to Arabians to warm bloods, and they do really well on all kinds of terrain, trail rides, arena, you name it. I've learned a lot over the last probably a couple of years by listening to podcasts and reading books and articles and watching videos about the way that traditional metal shoes can really restrict the growth of the foot. It can make the heels grow super narrow, have a really bad impact on the digital cushion, restrict proper blood flow to the frog through impact of the frog on the ground. There are just better ways, more up-to-date, modern ways of dealing with hoof issues. There's some incredible work being done through the use of track systems and different types of footing for treatment of navicular disease. Some really innovative rubber composite horseshoes being used that I'm a big fan of. Really incredible hoof boots. So I'm going to put horseshoes in no thanks. Oh crap, there's actually a couple of other pieces of equipment that I can think of now that I used to use that I wouldn't use. But I don't have the image, so I'm just going to talk about them and I'll put an image on the screen. So one is a piece of equipment that is, I don't know if it's mandatory, but based on the amount of people that use it, you'd think it's mandatory in the hunters, and that is a standing martingale. At face value, the point of a standing martingale is to prevent a horse from putting its head past a certain point, kind of like a Chambon, but it's leather. So like they get to a certain point, they can't really put their head higher unless they pull really, really, really hard. I used a standing martingale all throughout my childhood. I used one on Chic, used one when I was jumping Annabelle. I would put this in what's the point, because if a horse is trained properly, they shouldn't need it. And it's more, at least in the hunter world, it's more for aesthetic than anything else. To me, it's just part of like hunter fashion. reason that you like need a standing martingale. And last but not least is probably the only one that's going to go in. You use that on a horse, and that is a twitch. Now, I've never used an ear twitch. Even when I was a kid and I first learned what an ear twitch was, I was horrified. But I do have these like vague memories of using a twitch on a horse for vet procedure. Like, I don't even know what horse or when it was, but I don't know. A twitch is just something that I would never use. And I know that there's probably a case where there would be a use for it in terms of like if you really needed to inject a horse or something for their own safety. In that case, I could see a reason to use it, but it would be like very dire circumstances. These are just my opinions. I'm not trying to start anything. I just thought that this might be an entertaining video to do. If you would like to have a discussion in the comments, that is welcome. Keep it respectful, keep it kind. Any rude, mean comments will be deleted. The reason that I say that respectful and kind discourse is welcome in the comments is because I don't believe in creating an echo chamber on social media. I think there should be room for challenging of opinions and things like that. The thing that I find about equestrian social media and any kind of content that challenges equipment or practices, people feel attacked rather than they actually are attacked. And when people feel attacked, rather than considering the logic behind what you're saying, they attack you as a person, as a horse trainer. They attack your character rather than pulling apart what you're saying. Most of what I've said in one way or another is backed up by science. Some is just my opinion, but I try to form my opinions of things in the horse world based on science. The thing that science does is it rebukes or disproves tradition. In the equestrian world, I don't know if you've noticed, is very, very, very based on tradition, and anyone who starts to go against that, we see this with people who, like me, trying to advocate for use of positive reinforcement. People prioritize tradition over advances in equipment and science and studies that show ways that we can improve equine welfare. All that to say, most of the discourse that I see on social media whenever someone is talking about particularly things like draw reins, training aids, people who are advocating for the use of positive reinforcement, this is like the biggest one. People who are like vehemently against stalling, they'll say things like, oh, my horse likes being stalled. And then you come back at them with some facts of equine science and equine behavior information. It's like they refuse to listen to what you're saying. Going forward, and for the last couple of years, any decisions that I make for my horse, I research the heck out of it, and they're all based on the latest information that I can find, publicly available. And I read all different kinds of points of view. Like, I do my best to keep an open mind when I'm trying to learn about a new topic. Most of the time, the rebuttals that people will come back with are based in tradition. This is the way it's always been done. And when you don't accept that as an answer, they come back and they attack your character. And to me, the attacking of a character is not a good response to the presentation of science. So in my comment sections, I encourage healthy debates and discussions. The minute that someone is rude to me or anyone else, I delete them. Currently, I'm gonna have like a 3 strikes you're out kind of policy, but if it's really rude, you're gonna be blocked. I've been doing a lot of thinking about boundaries in social media, and I've realized that it's my YouTube channel, it's my TikTok, it's my Instagram, and if I wanna block someone, I can. And I think it's healthy that if someone is being rude to you, you don't have to deal with them. You don't have to always be the bigger person and let them have a soapbox for their views. And yeah, that was an interesting way to end this video. I didn't plan on going on that tangent, but I think it's a really important caveat to add to the end of this video, where I have gone through some pieces of equipment that might cause a type of discourse in the comments section. So if you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and if you want to be notified every time that I post a new video, hit the bell. Until next time, I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. Don't forget to give your horse or pony a hug or a kiss the next time you see them, and I will see you next time. Bye. Anyways, yeah, I haven't really had time or energy to film. Oh my god. Oh my god. Stop.